My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me now and we will explore these topics and so much more with fascinating guests, authors, and experts who will guide us to Destination Unlimited. Remember coloring books when we were kids? They featured shapes and designs that were usually meant to teach us something. Artistic kids, the ones with the big 64 box of color Crayola crayons, could do some amazing artwork. They had an innate sense for color, texture, and unlike the kids like me, were able to keep the color within the lines. I was an over-the-line and outside-the-box kind of kid, and that worked out just fine for me. Ever consider coloring now? What if you had a book that not only gave you the joy of coloring, but also opened and expanded your concept of the subtle energy centers that make up all of us? My guest this week, Dr. Susan Shumsky, has created a book just like that for all of us. Susan has dedicated her life to helping people take command of their lives in highly effective, powerful, and positive ways. She's the best-selling author of 13 books, a pioneer in the human potential field. She spent nearly 50 years teaching thousands of people meditation, prayer, affirmation, and intuition. For 22 years, her mentor was Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who was a guru to the Beatles and Deepak Chopra. She served on Maharishi's personal staff for 7 years. Her books include Miracle Prayer, Divine Revelation, Exploring Meditation, Exploring Auras, Exploring Chakras, How to Hear the Voice of God, Ascension, Instant Healing, The Power of Auras, The Power of Chakras, and tonight we'll be discussing her latest, a coloring book for adults and children entitled Color Your Chakras, an interactive way to understand the energy centers of the body. Please welcome Dr. Susan Shumsky. Good evening, Susan.
Good evening. I'm so happy to be here with you tonight, Victor.
And so delighted to have you with me. Susan and I first met when we were both children. That was about 20 years ago. I attended a wonderful weekend workshop she taught here in New York after the publication of Divine Revelation, and I've been a fan and a follower ever since. Susan does some amazing work and has helped thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So, Susan, let's begin by sharing a little bit about your path with our listeners. When did you first become aware of subtle and spiritual energy, and how did that manifest for you?
Well, actually, it was the 60s. I was a hippie. I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area. And perhaps your listeners don't realize this, but those of us who were flower children, we were really very serious about studying spirituality. We wanted to have experiences of higher states of consciousness. We wanted to experience spiritual enlightenment. So that was what we were really into as flower children. And I was reading the Buddhist texts. I was reading Tibetan Book of the Dead and other Buddhist scriptures like the Dhammapada. I was also reading Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. And I was reading Alan Watts' books, including The Way of Zen. And in the books by Alan Watts, he said that you have to find a meditation guide. Well, in 1966 in Berkeley, California, you did not go to the Yellow Pages and find anything remotely similar to a meditation guide. So I asked my roommate, I said, well, how do I find this meditation guide? And he said, have you ever tried to meditate on your own? And so I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. So I lay down on my bed. I didn't even know that you're supposed to sit up when you meditate. That's how clueless I was. I lay down on my bed and I sort of prayed for or asked for a meditation. Immediately I was propelled into an ecstatic state. And I felt this rush of energy or cord of energy rushing from the tips of my toes all the way to the top of my head. I felt like I was plugged into an electric socket, but in the most ecstatic way. And so I concluded, I figured, well, I guess this is meditation. little did I know that I had not only had my first meditation experience, but I had had my first Kundalini experience all at the same time.
Yes.
And it was not too long after that I found myself in the meditation center, Transcendental Meditation Center. And I saw the picture of the guru on the wall, who was Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who later became the guru of the Beatles, and he also became the guru of Deepak Chopra. But at that time, he was virtually unknown. So I just saw that picture, and I just felt that this was what I needed to do. This is what I needed to study. And just a few years after that, I found myself in India on the banks of the Ganges studying with him to become a meditation teacher.
Now, I remember you sharing about a period of time you spent. I believe you said it was in almost constant meditation in your room in the ashram. What was that like, and how did it change you?
Yes, as a matter of fact, when I would take meditation retreats, I would meditate, up to 20 hours a day. But also when I spent time either on the meditation courses or when I was on staff. I actually was on Maharishi's personal staff for 7 years. During that time, I meditated anywhere from 5 to 20 hours a day, depended on what was going on at the time. So what was it like? Well, we were like pioneers back then. It was like we were cutting the pathway in the forest. The forest was a forest of a lot of negative energy on the planet, and we were cutting through with a scythe to lighten up the planet and to create a better vibration in the atmosphere on this planet. And that's exactly what we did through meditation and through meditating in large groups, is we changed the atmosphere of the planet so that now the planet is on a much higher vibration, and a lot more people, obviously, than 50 years ago, a lot more people know about Eastern wisdom, know about meditation. They're actually practicing yoga. They're practicing martial arts. They're doing all of these very powerful methods that are transforming them in really positive ways. So, we were like pioneers. And what was it like? To me, it was extremely blissful to be in meditation. I always loved meditating. I still do.
But a 20 hours of meditation continuously, that must have been an amazing experience.
Well, it was a very peaceful experience. It brought me into a state of happiness, which I had never really experienced before in my life. I was quite young when I started doing this. I was like 19 years old when I started transcendental meditation. But I can't say I had ever really felt that level or degree of happiness earlier in my life. It was just because I was experiencing inner happiness.
Now, what was your return to the United States like after your stay in India?
Well, actually, I wasn't in India for most of that time that I was on the personal staff of Maharishi. I was living mostly in Switzerland, but I also lived in Italy and Austria and Spain and Majorca, different places in Europe. And what was it like after I got back? It was total culture shock. I felt like I was a fish out of water. I didn't know what in the world to do. I was really sort of devastated in a way, and I couldn't hold a conversation with anyone because I really couldn't relate to anybody. It was just odd. And even other TM people and TM teachers, I couldn't even relate to them because there was no basis of kind of commonality or understanding of what kind of experience I had just had being in that kind of sphere of that presence of that great master. It was just really different than being out in the world.
How can one balance being in that state of bliss and grace and then re-immersion into our world as it is?
It wasn't easy for me, I'll tell you. But, I managed to do it. And I managed to do it because I had to do it.
Absolutely.
No other choice.
The practicalities of life in our world, you had to sort of...
Exactly. I had to figure out how I'm going to make a living. I had to, there I am in New York, and I'm taking my portfolio of pictures around to try to get some jobs as an illustrator. And then finally I figured out that if I would design jewelry, that I could actually make a living at that. So I did that for a long time. I actually designed jewelry for 20 years. Designed diamond jewelry. I designed thousands of pieces of diamond jewelry.
And did you do well?
Yeah, I did fine. I did quite well, actually.
Wonderful. Now, share with our listeners the genesis of Divine Revelation, because that's when I came to know you, with the publication of Divine Revelation.
Well, after I was still living in the ashrams. This was when I was living in Fairfield, Iowa. That's one of Maharishi's ashrams. As I said, I was in his ashrams for 22 years. And so when I got back to the United States, at some point, I did end up at one of his ashrams, which is in Fairfield, Iowa. And there I met somebody who was bugging the heck out of me and trying to teach me something that I couldn't imagine that he could teach me anything about meditation, because I really was very arrogant and thought I knew everything. Just like a lot of people who are into TM, I'm sorry to say, is that they really think that they know it all and no one else has anything to offer them. Let's put it that way. So that's the way I was. And this gentleman, he managed to convince me that really he did have something to teach me.
And we're going to pick up on that thought when we come back with Dr. Susan Shumsky, author of the new book, Color Your Chakras, an interactive way to understand the energy centers of the body, on Destination Unlimited, after these words from the OMTimes Radio Network.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Join me, Maggie Chula, on Mondays at noon Eastern for Mastermind with Maggie. Let's work together in a mastermind. We can resolve life's problems and create goals for the future. Build action steps empowering you to create your life in partnership with your divine source of light, your soul. Manifesting your goals can be simple and easy, so come with your problems and leave with a plan. The Akashic Master Teachers and I are waiting to help you.
How to be a great dad in 15 seconds. Bike ride, go fish, walk in the park, phone call, milkshake, play catch, picnic, fly a kite, tell jokes, laugh, talk, read a story, tell a story, bumper cars, swing set, bowling, pillow fight, cut loose, stay tight. Whew. Because the smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today. Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
You're listening to OTR FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
And we're back on Destination Unlimited. My guest this evening, Dr. Susan Shumsky, author of the new book, Color Your Chakras, an interactive way to understand the energy centers of the body. So we were talking about the genesis of Divine Revelation, which became sort of a banner of your work for many, many years. And you were saying that you were in Iowa at one of the Maharishi's ashrams, and there was a gentleman there who sort of pushed your buttons, but sort of led to the genesis of Divine Revelation. Please share with our listeners about that.
Yeah, so I don't know what possessed him, but he kept bugging the heck out of me. He said, I want to teach you these techniques. You have to learn these methods. You have to learn this form of meditation. I said, I just kind of flicked him away with a flip of my wrist. That's basically how I treated him. I was not the least bit interested. And then something happened. I actually had gotten into trouble with the board of don't know what you call it. We called it the board of executive governors there, the board of the organization, the TM organization. And they were about to call, they said that I had to come into their office. And I was really kind of terrified about it. And so I don't know what possessed me, but I called this guy. And he said, get out a piece of paper. I'm going to dictate an affirmation to you. And I wasn't even sure what an affirmation was, but he said, I'm going to dictate this to you. And I want you to use this affirmation for 15 minutes over and over and over before you go into that meeting. And so I wrote down the affirmation, and I was so scared and apprehensive about this meeting that I actually said that affirmation over and over for 30 minutes before going into the meeting. But after I had said it for 30 minutes, I was feeling so centered, so balanced, so much in control. And I just had felt like completely so much grace, and it was amazing. So I walked into the room. I had tremendous self-confidence, and I sat down with full confidence. And they ended up in that meeting apologizing to me for any inconvenience that may have caused me. So I was so impressed with that one affirmation that I decided to study with this guy. And he taught me this method that I later called divine revelation. And it was so powerful that I got very excited about it. I started teaching it, and first I started inviting other teachers to come, and then I learned how to teach it myself, and then I was teaching it. So it evolved like that. But it was a really amazing experience, and it was another method of meditation that I found to be very profound, and that has helped me ever since I learned it, which was 1986 when I learned it. So it's just been amazing and phenomenal. It's really changed my life in really powerful ways, very positive ways.
And I remember you teaching in the seminar about listening to the still, soft voice within. Share a little bit about that, please.
Yeah, well, divine revelation is about listening to that inner voice, the voice of divine guidance. It is your own intuition, and how to develop that ability to receive that message intuitively through clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, and how to receive answers to pertinent questions in your life that you want to ask of Spirit with a capital S, and be guided by Spirit in your everyday life. And it's really, the experience is so profound because you're never alone again, because you have what I call the inner teachers to guide you. You have your higher self to guide you, and you are embraced by Spirit, and you feel this sense of always being at home in the heart of God. It's an incredibly powerful method. And so I've written several books about it, and a lot of people have learned, especially from my books.
And I remember your teaching the difference between listening for that inner guidance and the difference in the voices.
Right.
That the voice that shouts, that may be fear-based, that tells you what to do is really the voice of ego and not
Right.
the true voice, but that still soft voice, the voice of loving compassion, the voice that resonates, is the voice that you listen to.
Exactly. And I have a 10-test system for testing the method, for testing whether it's truly the divine voice or some other voice. Is it your ego? Is it the true divine voice? Is it an astral entity? Is it wishful thinking? Who or what is giving you the message? So it's important to discern and distinguish. So I have a 10-test system for that, which I teach in several of my books. I teach it in one of my very recent books called Awaken Your Divine Intuition. I teach it quite thoroughly in that book, and also in my very first book called Divine Revelation.
And for those of you who have never read Divine Revelation or are not familiar with Dr. Susan's work, if you're thinking about developing and really growing on a very high spiritual level and learning about tapping the inner voice, the true inner voice, get a copy of Divine Revelation. It's how many millions of books has that sold since it was published? Because for me, in my mind, anyone who ever came to me and said, how can I learn about listening to that voice? I said, get a copy of Dr. Susan's Divine Revelation. One of the best books on the topic.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that endorsement. It means a lot to me.
My pleasure.
It's been in print since 1996. It's been in continuous print with Simon & Schuster since 1996. I'm happy to say that.
That's wonderful. So let's move on to your latest book and talk a little bit about the foundation of that book. So share with our listeners a little bit about auras and chakras and prana. Maybe many people have a sense of what the aura is, but what really is an aura?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's start with prana, because some of the aura is made of prana. So prana is a Sanskrit word, and it means life force energy. In India, they call it prana. In China, they call it chi.
Right.
And in Japan, they call it ki.
Right.
So this is the life force energy. It is what is keeping you alive.
Mm-hmm.
In the ancient scriptures of India, it is said that when prana is in the body, that is what is defined as life. And when prana leaves the body, that is what is defined as death. Mm. So as long as prana is flowing through your subtle body, you are alive. Prana is in the air, it's in food, it's in water, it's in the sunshine, it's in thought. And you're imbibing prana through all of those things. And especially through the air that you breathe, you're imbibing prana. And pranic energy or life force energy flows through specific conduits of energy in your subtle body. Those conduits of energy in India, they call those nadi, N-A-D-I. And in China, they call them meridian. So the prana is flowing through these pathways, conduits of energy. Now, if you were to dissect a corpse, you would not find nadi or prana or anything like that, because it's not in this dimension. It's in a subtler dimension, meaning it's in your subtle body. But your subtle body is what is keeping your gross physical body alive. And that's difficult for physicians to understand that, because they only see what they can dissect. But the reality is this subtle body, which continues from lifetime to lifetime, which does not die when you die. That's the reason why people who have a near-death experience are able to see themselves lying on the bed, or lying on the hospital bed, or lying on the ground, or wherever their body happens to be. They're seeing themselves lying there because their subtle body has left their gross physical body, and the senses are in your subtle body. So that's why they're able to see, hear, and so on. All right, so those conduits of subtle energy, when many of those conduits come together in a plexus of energy, that is called chakra. Chakra is a Sanskrit word that means wheel. Mm-hmm. The wheel has a hub. The hub is that place where all those nadis are coming together in a plexus, and the spokes are the radiations of energy, radiations of pranic energy. So you have 7 major chakra in your subtle body, and you have 7 other chakra that are minor, that are also in your subtle body. So these are all in one of the sheaths of your subtle body. Now I'm getting to the aura here, because you asked about the aura. So the aura is made up of these sheaths. And the sheaths are, in India, they call them kosha. That's the Sanskrit word for the sheaths. So you have what's known as the pranic sheath or vital sheath. Mm-hmm. And that is pranamaya kosha. And that particular sheath contains the pranic energy and the nadi and the chakras. Okay? Then you have some other sheaths, which I'll touch upon. You have the Manomaya Kosha, which is your mental sheath, mm-hmm. which that contains your senses, your sensory apparatus, and it contains your ability to have attention, to be conscious. Then we have another sheath called the Vijnanamaya Kosha, which is your intellect and ego sheath. And then we have the Anandamaya Kosha, which is your
bliss.
Blissful, yes, does mean bliss, and it is your causal body, and that is what creates individuation. So those are the sheaths of your subtle body, and your subtle body is your auric field or energy field. So it took a long time for me to explain what an aura is, but that is what an aura is. An aura pervades, permeates, and surrounds your physical body, and it contains all these sheaths that I mentioned.
And if one of the sheaths is out of balance, would you say it ain't kosher?
It ain't kosher. That's right.
Kosher,
That's pretty good. I like that joke. That's very good.
Thank you very much. I'm famous for that kind of nonsense.
That's
But
really
anyway, so before we're going to be coming to a break shortly, but what does the word, you mentioned the word chakra means a wheel.
Right.
Why do people sometimes pronounce it differently? I've heard chakra and all kinds of pronunciation.
That's because they don't know how to pronounce it.
Okay, but the true Sanskrit pronunciation
Absolutely.
would be
It's
chakra.
Chakra. I know the Sanskrit letters, I know the Sanskrit sounds, and I know how to pronounce them. Actually, it's chakra.
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 A little bit of a glutterization. I can't even say that word, though, but I understand what you're saying. And our guest tonight, Dr. Susan Shumsky, author of the brand new book, Color Your Chakras, an interactive way to understand the energy centers of the body. Susan, please tell our listeners how they can get your books and find out more about you and your wonderful work.
Oh, thank you. So I suggest you purchase Color Your Chakras on Amazon.com because it'll be less expensive and you'll get it faster. I do have a website, however, and you're welcome to order any of my products or books there. The website is drsusan.org. That's drsusan.org. And on that website, you can read the first chapter of all my books. You can listen to audio teleseminars. You can listen to radio interviews. You can read articles, and you can watch videos. There's a lot on that website. Also, I have another website that I want to just mention, which is divinetravels.com. That's DIVINETRAVELS.com. On that website, you can find out about wonderful spiritual tours and retreats, tours to sacred destinations, cruise ship seminars and conferences. And it's a good idea to subscribe there because then you can find out about future events.
And we'll be back with Dr. Susan Shumsky on Destination Unlimited on the OMTimes radio network after these messages. Are you in an interfaith relationship and thinking of getting married? For 18 years, Reverend Laurie Sue Brockway has been creating personalized, loving, and romantic ceremonies for couples of all faiths and cultural backgrounds. Reverend Laurie Sue's sensitivity to the needs of interfaith couples is reflected in the compassionate and inclusive way she addresses the concerns of parents and families. Reverend Laurie Sue is also the author of several best-selling books on interfaith weddings and wedding vows. Selected as one of the top interfaith officiants by New York Magazine, Reverend Laurie Sue serves couples in the New York metropolitan area and beyond. Find out more at her website, yourinterfaithwedding.com. And we're back on Destination Unlimited. My guest this evening is Dr. Susan Shumsky, author of the new book, Color Your Chakras, an interactive way to understand the energy centers of the body. So before the break, Susan, we were talking about the prana, we were talking about the koshas, we were talking about the chakras and the aura. What does Kundalini now? What does Kundalini mean?
Okay, great. So Kundal is a Sanskrit term and it means curled up. So it's a curled up energy. It's actually curled up at the base of your spine. in the first chakra, which is the root chakra, called Muladhara chakra. So that first chakra has a Shiva Linga, which is the phallus of Lord Shiva, is in there. And it has this female energy that's coiled around that. And that curled up energy, it is said in the scriptures, it's curled 3.5 times with head down. Now, head down means it's asleep, actually. That's what it means. So the Kundalini energy in average individuals is asleep. It has not been awakened. So for the vast majority of people, they are not really awakened to their higher self. They're not awakened to higher pursuits. If a person is awakened to higher pursuits, it means that Kundalini has awakened to some degree. If a person is interested in art, music, science, intellectual pursuits, for example, it means that their Kundalini has risen to some degree. If they are spiritually awakened, it means Kundalini is awakened even more. So Kundalini is a form of pranic energy. We know what prana is. That's the life force energy. Kundalini energy is a specific kind of life force energy that is involved with spiritual awakening.
No, I'm sorry,
yes.
Go ahead. I apologize. Go ahead.
No problem. There is a specific nadi, that means conduit of subtle energy, conduit of pranic energy, or energy tube, if you will, that runs through your spinal canal. That tube is called Sushumna Nadi. And prana, when prana flows through that tube, it is Kundalini. Kundalini goes through that tube and goes up that tube when Kundalini awakens. And Kundalini can be awakened by various means, including spiritual practices, breathing exercises that they call pranayama. It can be awakened through other yogic practices called bandhas. So there are several ways. Also meditation awakens Kundalini. So there are many ways to awaken Kundalini, but in average individuals, that Sushumna Nadi is completely closed off. It's sealed at the bottom end, and Kundalini is just sitting there, curled up and asleep.
Now, bandhas are, you mentioned bandhas. Bandhas are like, sort of like locks or gates?
Correct. Those are muscular locks.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a bandha is.
And how do you use the bandhas to raise the Kundalini?
Right. So, for example, there's 3 major bandhas. One is the Mula Bandha, which is the squeezing of the anus. The second is Uddiyana Bandha, which is where the abdominal muscles go high up into the thoracic cavity. And then the third bandha is the Jalandhara Bandha, and that's where the chin goes down to the sternum. So, in other words, it's called the neck lock. So there's the root lock, Mula Bandha, and the abdominal lock, Uddiyana Bandha, and then the neck lock is the Jalandhara Bandha. So these particular practices, which I teach in a couple of my books, maybe even more than 2 of my books. I know that I teach those bandhas in the book, The Power of Chakras, and also in the book, I believe I teach it in the book, The Power of Auras. So these bandhas really are very helpful for raising the Kundalini energy. That's just what they do. The Kundalini does get raised up the spine when you do these locks, these bandhas.
What is the physical sensation? Is there a physical sensation connected with Kundalini rising?
Right. So for some people, they do get certain physical sensations, like feeling rushes up the spine or heat. They might feel like their spine is on fire. They might feel ants are crawling up their spine. They might feel all kinds of odd sensations. And then if they don't understand what's going on, they'll end up in the psychiatrist's office because they go to the doctor and the doctor will say, that's just your imagination. So they end up in the psychiatrist and the psychiatrist gives them some kind of drugs and then they no longer have their experiences.
Now, the concept of energy rising along the spine is not unique to these teachings. You find something comparable to this all over the world in ancient cultures.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about all over the world, but certainly in China and in the Far East. I'm not sure about other places, but yes, Kundalini is definitely real. So obviously people of all cultures are going to experience it.
Now, millions of people practice Hatha Yoga around the world. But what does the word yoga actually mean?
Oh, good. I'm glad you asked that question. The word yoga, it comes from a root, yuj, Y-U-J, which means to bind or to unite or to yoke. Okay, so it actually means the same word as religion. Religion actually comes from a root that means to bind, to unite, to yoke. So yoga is binding. We're binding. We are uniting. So what are we uniting? Well, we're not, I'll tell you one thing, Victor, we're not uniting the nose with the knee. We're not uniting the forehead with the floor. That's not yoga. Yoga is uniting the individual spirit with universal spirit. That's what it is. So what's practiced in the gym, that they might be doing an exercise. That's what we call an asana, but it's not yoga. Yoga means the experience or the state of yoga is the state of experiencing oneness with universal spirit. So what you're doing is you are experiencing a state of bliss consciousness or Satchitananda, absolute bliss consciousness, where you are experiencing that oneness with all, the oneness with the allness, the oneness with God.
Now, the Hindu scriptures tell us there are different ways of achieving this yoga.
Yes, there are many ways. For example, they talk about karma yoga, which is selfless service. They talk about bhakti yoga, which is devotion to God. They talk about hatha yoga, which is the culture of physical practice, culturing the physical body through practices such as the asanas and the pranayama and the bandhas and all that. There's Kundalini yoga, which means raising the Kundalini through the spinal canal. There is integral yoga, which integrates many different yoga practices. There's Raja yoga, which is the use of mantras and transcendental awareness. And there is mantra yoga, which is, that's mantras, chanting mantras usually. So there's many forms of yoga, and all of them have the same goal. And you can reach yoga through any of those means.
And I know that many people practice the Hatha Yoga as a means of preparation for meditation. How does that work?
Well, yeah, actually, if you practice the asanas, which are the postures, yogic postures, and you practice pranayama before you meditate, then that you're already going into a deep and subtle state even before you begin the meditation. So it is a great preparation for meditation.
Now, let's start talking about your brand new book. It's called Color Your Chakras, an interactive way to understand the energy centers of the body. Now, most people, when they hear about chakras, are familiar with 7 chakras. But in your book, you have 14 of them. Why 14?
Well, the reason I have 14 chakras is when my publisher asked me to write another book. That book is called The Power of Chakras. When my publisher asked me to write that book, I immediately went back to the ancient scriptures of India, the Vedic and the Tantric scriptures, to find the most authentic information that I could find about that subject. So what I found in the ancient scriptures is they describe in great detail 14 chakras. There's the 7 major chakras that people mostly know about, which is the root chakra, the pelvic chakra, the navel chakra, the heart chakra, the throat chakra, the third eye chakra, and the crown chakra. But people don't know that there are these other 7. One is called Hrit chakra, which is right below the heart. and the rest of them are in your head or above your head.
So let's talk a little bit about some of those. Let's talk about the one that's below the heart chakra.
Hrit chakra is the center of devotion. That's where the deity resides. That is actually where you have the wish-fulfilling tree. You have the deity that is established there. So in your heart, you are feeling this devotion towards the deity, and that is the purpose of the Hrit chakra.
And what about the chakras that are above the crown?
Okay, so there's only one chakra that's above the crown, but there are several chakras in your head. One is the Manas chakra, which is where your mental body resides. That is near your Agya chakra. It's near your third eye chakra. Your third eye is in your pineal gland area, and your Manas chakra is very close to that. And then the Indu chakra, which is the intellect ego chakra, that is rather close to. It's in the third ventricle. Then you have the Nirvana chakra, which is right at the top of your skull, inside your skull, but at the top of your skull. And then you have the Guru chakra, which is right below the crown chakra. It's above your head. Guru chakra is above your head, but below your crown chakra. And then above the crown chakra is what we call the Bindu point.
Wonderful. And we'll be back with more of Dr. Susan Shumsky talking about her new book, Color Your Chakras, an interactive way to understand the energy centers of the body, after these messages on the OMTimes radio network.
As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Hi, this is Sylvia Henderson, intuitive life coach and energy healer. Are you ready to elevate and rise way above your normal? Be sure to listen to my show, Intuitive Transformations, on OMTimes Radio, Sunday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern. Get the inspiration you need to transform your life.
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Elia, in the circle on Sunday 2 p.m. Eastern as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
Mother, Mother Ocean.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Buffett. West Indian manatees are one of the most unique animals on Earth, and we're still finding out so many new things about them. But manatees are endangered, and many of them are killed or injured each year because of watercraft collisions or other human activities. You can help save these gentle marine mammals. For free tips on what you can do, call Save the Manatee Club at 1-800-432-JOIN. Thank you.
I'm Alec Baldwin with People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I grew up loving circuses and other traveling animal shows, but it never occurred to me what life might be like for the animals. Training wild animals to do things they don't understand takes force. Routine discipline with a hook or whip with the heel of a boot shows the animal exactly who's the boss. Don't patronize animal acts. Please contact People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
757-622-PETA.
And we're back with Dr. Susan Shumsky, author of the new book, Color Your Chakras. Before the break, Susan, we were talking about the different chakras, how there are 14 chakras. We lost one. What's the lost chakra?
Yes, there's another chakra which is in the uvula. The uvula is in the back of your throat. So the what we call the Talu chakra is situated there. And the Talu chakra is related to the nectar of immortality, which is produced in the pineal gland and which trickles down into the area of the uvula.
Now, we talk about the pineal gland as the third eye, and we know that when we're born, that is a very active organ, is it not?
Yes, and in children, the pineal gland is very pristine and clear and pure. And then as people age, it becomes more calcified due to various toxins and poisons that people take, particularly fluoridated water in our country. So, that pineal gland tends to age, shall we say. However, the good news is that your third eye is not really in your physical body, it's in your subtle body.
Right.
So you can develop your third eye even with a pineal gland that's less than pristine.
Now, what are some of the myths about chakras?
Well, some of the myths about chakras. Well, one myth is that they form a kind of a rainbow from the from the root chakra up to the top of the head. Is that there's like this kind of red, orange, yellow kind of thing. But in fact, the way that the colors are described in the ancient scriptures of India are not like that at all. And also, each one of your major chakras is associated with a planet and with a day of the week. And those planets and days of the weeks are associated with different colors than that rainbow thing that people think.
You mean to say we can't use Roy G. Biv to identify the colors of the chakras? That was my mnemonic. I'll never be able to do this ever again now. So let's talk about those chakras. What are some of the colors associated with the chakras?
Well, I have to really talk about the planets, too, if I'm going to do that. So
let's do it.
I have to start with the days of the week.
Let's do it.
Actually associated with days of the week. So we have we have to start with Sunday, the day of the sun. And the day of the sun is the solar plexus. Solar plexus, day of the sun. And that is the navel chakra, right? So that one is red. And then we have, after that, we have the day of the moon. Monday, moon day, right? Day of the moon. So on moon day, Monday, we have the pelvic chakra, and that is associated with fecundity. It's associated with procreation, and it's a feminine energy. It's a moon energy, and that is the color of that is a orange color. Then we have the root chakra. The next one is Tuesday, the root chakra. Tuesday, and Tuesday in French is Mardi or Mars Day. And Spanish, it's whatever that is. It means Mars also, Mars Day. So Tuesday is day of Mars, and that is associated with the planet Mars, which is the planet of survival and aggression and male energy and that kind of thing. So, and that one is a yellow color. Then we have Wednesday. Wednesday is mercredi in French, okay? So that would be the Mercury day. Mercury day, mercredi. So that one would be the green color associated with Mercury. Mercury is the planet of communication. When you think of Mercury, you think of the internet or something like that. And it's a huge amount of connections, very big amount of correlations and connections. So that's associated with the crown chakra, which is associated with your brain and all the neurons and, the almost infinite number of connections going on there in the brain. So that would be Wednesday. Then we have Thursday, which is jeudi in French, meaning Jupiter Day. Jupiter Day is the third eye chakra, and that is the chakra that's in your pineal gland, and it is in India. The word Jupiter is guru. The Sanskrit word for Jupiter is guru. So it means the inner teacher. Your third eye is the seat of the inner teacher. It is the seat of wisdom, of higher knowledge, of intuition, of illumination, the seat of illumination. That's your third eye. That's Jupiter, and the color is a blue. The next chakra and a day of the week is Friday. which is vendredi, meaning Venus day. Venus day. Vendredi is in the throat chakra. And why is it the throat chakra? Because that is communication. From our throat, we're communicating. We're talking. Artistic expression that is the throat chakra. It's right there. So Venus day, that is indigo. And then the last day of the week, Saturn day. So that day is the heart chakra. And that is the reason why Saturn is associated with that is because Saturn is a planet of contraction and expansion. Contraction and expansion, that's exactly what the heart does. The heart beats. It beats.
Wonderful.
So that is the violet color.
A great education tonight, because that is a total different teaching from what most of us have been experienced to. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, it's based upon the ancient Jyotish, meaning the Hindu or Vedic astrology, ancient astrology according to the wisdom of ancient India. A very accurate form of astrology.
And Susan, how are the chakras related to the elements, the senses, and the organs?
Oh, okay. So let's see. The 5 lowest chakras are associated with the 5 elements. So we have the root chakra, which is associated with earth element. It's associated with the organs of elimination. In other words, the chakras are associated with the organs that are nearby. Sacral or pelvic chakra is associated with the gonads, and the element is water. The navel chakra is associated with digestion and the organs there, the stomach and the pancreas and the liver, the whole area around the navel. And the element is fire. The heart chakra is associated with the element of air, and the heart and lungs are the organs. And then the throat chakra is the element of ether, and that's associated with the gland at the throat, which is the thyroid gland. And then the 6th chakra is associated, like I said, with the pineal gland, and it's the seat of the mind. It's not one of the elements, it's the seat of the mind and intuition. And then the crown chakra is above the head, and that's associated with, it's associated with your whole brain, but it's associated with unification with the divine.
Now, what are the benefits of using the new book that you have, Color Your Chakras? What are the benefits of coloring? You know, I'm one of those kids who couldn't color between the lines. I could never do that. I always colored outside of the lines, and I was always outside of the box, which ain't a bad thing. But what are the benefits of using your great new book, Color Your Chakras?
Yes, there are benefits of using Color Your Chakras, because as you place your attention on each one of the chakras, as you're coloring them, you're actually waking them up. You're imbibing the energies of those chakras. So, for example, on the left page, it'll have, for example, an explanation of the root chakra. And then on the right page, you'll be coloring the picture that's there. You can color both pages, though. The left and right pages have mandalas. They're beautiful, actually. It's a beautiful book. And really great designs for you to color. But on the left page, you'll be learning about the different chakras, the elements, the deities that are associated with each chakra, and all 14 of the chakras, and also about the energy field. There are pictures of different aspects of the energy field, like the koshas, for example, those sheaths. There's one of that, for example. So on the left-hand pages, you're going to get that explanation, and then you can color. You can either use the colors that I suggest on the left page, or you can use your imagination and color it however you want.
So you're having the experience of not only learning about the chakras and the energy systems, but also allowing yourself to artistically express them.
Yeah, artistically express, and also just placing your attention on them, that increases the energy. in them. So if you're placing your attention on the heart chakra, for example, your heart chakra is going to be more prevalent. It will, you'll have more energy in the heart chakra.
And if you get everything running, you'll have a Kundalini coloring book, right?
For sure.
Our guest has been Dr. Susan Shumsky, author of the brand new book, Color Your Chakras, an interactive way to understand the energy centers of the body. Susan, please tell our listeners one more time how they can get your book and find out more about you and your amazing work.
Thank you. So my website is drsusan.org, drsusan.org. Go to the website. You can read the first chapter of my books. You can listen to free teleseminars. You can read articles, watch videos. Be sure to subscribe there. I can notify you about future events. Also, I have a wonderful website called divinetravels.com. That's DIVINETRAVELS.com. Go there and subscribe there, because then you'll find out about wonderful opportunities for sacred travel and going to amazing spiritual vortexes and destinations, and also cruise ship seminars with really famous speakers. And I think you'll really enjoy finding out about that. And be sure to subscribe there, because then you'll find out about future events.
The divine Susan Shumsky, thank you so much for joining us tonight and sharing your wisdom and your life experience with our listeners.
Well, it's my great pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, Victor.
And thank you for joining us tonight on Destination Unlimited. I am Victor the Voice Furman. Thanks for joining us, and have a wonderful week, everyone. Good night.